Climate, we just have four more now. Climate governance and resource curse. A resource curse is a socioeconomic phenomenon that negatively affects poor countries dependent on resource extraction. The paradox: countries with non-renewable resources fail to achieve economic growth. Instead, they face stagnation, social stratification, failure to invest in long-term development. And it just happens that this chapter gave many examples from small African nations where the head man took it all and ran. But there's a new face of this resource curse, and they give the examples of Canada and Australia, who were progressive governments, and now in 2011, Canada withdrew from Kyoto and was the first to do so, and it did it because it was threatening the lucrative tar sands. And Australia has recently rolled back its carbon tax. We need public pressure on political leaders to actively engage and confront private industry. Climate movement must find innovative, consumer-driven ways to have a seat at the table. Chapter 18, the political economic foundations of a sustainable system. It's incapable of addressing sustainability challenges as it is. U.S. is to grow 100 to 150 million by 2050, and U.S. cities are spatially and economically unstable. They're throwaway cities, and I think immediately of Detroit as jobs move away. Why public policy only able to slow but not stop ecological deterioration? Now this is pretty simplistic, but they say it's because of concentration of wealth and self-reinforcing capture of political machinery to serve private ends. Labor unions, this is a good point. Labor unions associated with social democratic strength, but unions are down from 35% of the labor force in 1950 to 6.9% of the labor force today. Widespread misperception is that private marketplace is good and dictatorial government is bad. But modern research shows that each individual's gains are actually unearned surplus derived largely from technological gains made in the past. Listen to this, because this is really good, and it's gonna, I think it'll be clear when you see this next paragraph. Examples of this collective subsidy. Here we have one: government-funded research, for example, the internet. So as an individual, we're gaining from that. But what is the FEC about to do, or we're afraid it's going to do? It's going to make it expensive for us as individuals. But that was the government, that was supposed to be the commons. It's supposed to be the commons. Okay, government-created markets through procurements provide huge collective subsidy, but it's for private gains frequently. And there's going to be a statement down here that's going to just be the ringer. Public education. That's expanding the heritage of scientific knowledge. Look at the debates about deservingness. These are common assets, but private socialism occurs when wealth generated by common assets, all these government-funded things, is not shared but captured by a small minority, and the public absorbs the loss when the wealthy fail. And we've been seeing that over and over and over again. I really appreciate how they put this. Alternative. People join together in community business, employee-owned to meet community need and regain local economic democracy and control. Nonprofit social enterprise. Imagine a wind farm for a small community in the Midwest. A community development corps started in 1960s. And I don't have examples of these, but the next chapter is on triple bottom line, and it'll give you some good examples. Community development financial institutions, employee ownership, cooperatives, and the next step they say, undermine, grow, or die. Democratize banking. What is it, North Dakota that has a state bank? And get health care so that it's not just a gift to the insurance company. Okay, here's the rise of triple bottom line business. And it gives examples of what community organizations, business organizations, if you like. Benefit corporations. Has an official requirement to strive for positive public purpose beyond financial success, people, planet, and profit. Conventional model for publicly traded corporations is myopic. There's a focus on short-term financial gain for a few investors or top executives. In other words, spend your way to influence government for tax regulations, low legal standards for corporate behavior, even lower public expectations. We see that as amoral capitalism, a race to the bottom for ethics. A benefit corporation, from shareholders to stakeholders, in other words, for a greater good. Do good and do well financially, increasingly aspiring to hold self to higher standards. Patagonia, you and I both know about. These others perhaps you don't, but they're examples of benefit corporations. But as you can see, the last parentheses, none have been court tested yet. Working toward energy democracy. Economic and environmental crisis is two sides of the same coin. The current regulatory market-based approaches have failed since they do not confront corporate power. They don't impede rush to rising energy demand, rising fossil fuel use, or rising emissions. We need to discard the neoliberal agenda, need to replace the anarchy of the energy market with an energy democracy away from centralized power generation built around fossil fuel. Need public sector approach, internationalist approach based on cooperation and sharing. So energy democracy strategic objectives: resist large energy corporations' agenda, reclaim privatized parts to public sphere, restructure to scale up renewables to have low carbon energy, and democratic control over energy sector. Threefold challenge to reclaim for public benefit. We should return to public control parts of the energy sector that now has been privatized. Restore principles of public service and public needs in publicly owned but run like private companies. Reassert right to develop new socially owned, fully unionized, renewables-based energy system to address serious social and environmental challenges. Privatization has led to underinvestment, loss of jobs, reduction in wages and union coverage, worse working conditions, worse quality of services, and oligarchies. To be a crucial battle, political battle. Take the wheel and steer. Now this is about trade unions and kind of a paradox with trade unions. Unions are in a dilemma. They must fulfill their core function to fight for wages, employment, and working conditions, but they're confronted with planetary reality, climate change. Their traditional response to job loss only addresses symptoms and not offer a cure. Some trade unions realize they need to be active participants in transition to sustainability, but they too are based on growth-based policies and technology. Technology change is not socially neutral, and technology and social changes need to go hand in hand. We need a strong trade union movement to transition through three dimensions of sustainability: economic, ecological, and social. A just transition is a trade union approach that was used in Canada in the 1990s, attempt to reconcile union efforts to provide workers with decent jobs and protect the environment. This is interesting data. 38% of all workers worldwide are in carbon-intensive jobs, usually low skilled. 50 million jobs have been lost since 2008 worldwide, on top of 200 million already unemployed, and 1.5 billion vulnerable. Unions are reluctant to accept role as the driver of green transformation because they fear downscaling production and downscaling consumption. And union bastions have often been where the most energy-intense, polluting industries are, such as coal, mining, steel, automotive. Union structures would have to be redeveloped from scratch. To advocate for sustainability may mean going against one's own industry. So we must redefine work to meet true human needs. Now, the thought of what work is for each of us is we contribute to society and we receive proper recognition, name, fame, money. So we need a redistribution of work, and it will require the acceptance of all forms of work. Think of the big old steel worker becoming an RN, caregiving, community work. New work models with shorter hours, engage workers in conversion strategies. Trade unions use defined measures to protect workers from being victims of change, step out of defensive strategy of reacting to policies, and use convincing guiding concepts. So this is a tremendous, transformation that needs to go on within the unions, because normally they are on the left of center and would be part of what we are aiming towards. Redefine role and transformation is emancipating social reform movement and extend to society at large. I wonder if we can do that. Not just workplace, they mandate to represent workers' interests in the just transition. So here's the conclusion. Sustainability is a socio-ecological problem. Technology is as much a problem as a solution. Markets will not be riding to the rescue. We must improve governance. It must become efficient, legitimate, and fair. And here are the 1, 2, 3, 4 levels. Personal of action. Personal action should be based in do no harm and minimize our own impact. Local action. Action by a community is indispensable. Biodiversity is best protected locally and regionally. National action. National governments have good intentions, but struggle is often ineffective. They need to grow a spine to resist industry. They can sponsor commons projects, land trusts, and peer networks. International action. UN bureaucratic inertia, underfunded but indispensable, and by the way, heavily male-dominated. Needs transparency, democratization. How can we do all of this? Citizen empowerment, responsibility, and mass movement. I see that everywhere. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's an awful lot. But we see it over and over again, This is not the only place we see this. We pulled a lot of it together.
Yeah.
It's only 5 till 3. Did anyone want to pursue some of the ideas here? And I'm not saying that I will necessarily be able to answer questions.
Well, there's so much in this book.
Yep.
It's very difficult to read because it's so stimulating. And I'm always led off to another book or another essay. So it would be helpful to the extent to which you could boil some of this down. What is
to me, it's this conclusion. In fact, I had thought about using this conclusion at the very beginning to kind of give us all a heads up. Now, this is what this book is going to be about. And to me, it all boils down to individual action within community, paying attention, individual action within community, and it becomes political and economic.
And that is what we're doing here, so important.
Exactly what we're doing is what we need to do.
I'm impressed with how much can be done on the local level.
Yeah.
I'm reading more and more, it's mentioned in here, but I see it in the newspapers. A community gets together and forbids fracking in there.
Right.
A community gets together, whatever, it's like, the national government's not gonna do it. We realize.
Yeah, New York State said no, but
but
started
bombarding
them, just like in Denton, Texas, they started bombarding.
It can be done on a local level, and you can control what happens within your local area.
We will see, because they're taking it to court now. They're taking Denton, for example, to court. Texas Land Commission, the Oil and Gas Association of Texas, on and on.
But I think there's local movements started with somebody.
Oh, yeah.
1 or 2 or 3 or 4 people started that locally.
And this is
they got it
education.
locally, and then it spread.
Right.
Like, you're not going to come from the top down, it's going to go from the bottom.
But Denton is like Fayetteville in the sense that they're both big university cities. So there's a lot of people there, even though it's Texas, who are using, using things that they've learned. sophisticated way.
But that also really emphasizes how the local is really, really important base, but you can't just depend on the local because they are going to be attacked by those very forces.
Like, you remember one of the statements, locally global?
Yeah.
That's exactly right,
Yeah.
locally global. Because some of these local organizations, be they cities or provinces, et cetera, they're going horizontal around the world and finding other ways to do things. In other words, it's all this bubbling of stuff. And we've been able to do it before, so why not do it again? You know, when they talk about apartheid, and they talk about women's rights, and they talk about black rights, and I mean, just on indigenous rights, it's just on and on, where
And
we've
every
actually
one of
made a
those,
change.
it seems totally impossible until it's done.
That's right, that's right.
And the divestiture from the fossil fuel plants.
Yeah.
I don't know how far that's going, I haven't noticed lately, but is it really taking off?
It's really taking
Well, it's not
off.
giving up anymore.
It's really taking off. But
And
Harvard
young
decided not to
people,
do
there's
it.
a national young people movement in public schools about divestiture too, I just read about yesterday, so I think that's growing.
Mhm.
But I totally agree with you about local energy initiative. But everything that we do on a local level can be notified in an instant by a congressional vote.
Right.
So we must continue to work there and hope that eventually we can return to the New Deal's concept of affirmative government that works for us. We've seen that vision, we know that it can happen, and we mustn't give up on the hope that we will get a Congress back that will be for us.
My hope is that the Republicans will not be able to govern, and it will be so shockingly evident that in the next election
They'll
cycle.
throw them out.
That's my hope.
I hope so too.
I went to Amazon to look at Cade's book, The Four Freedoms, that you are hoping the senior Democrats will talk about. And it's interesting how he pulls out small things that perhaps we didn't think about. But it's like it's a moment in time that can happen. And then it always goes back to the robber barons. You know, it's another moment in time that can happen. And then it goes back again, you know. I grew up thinking we could do it right. That's how I grew up, thinking we could do it right. And then the realities.
I had a couple of questions. One was about markets. Actually, according to the Citizens Employment Law, we could be using the market if we can get a carbon price.
Sure.
Then the market would be a driver. And I was also trying to connect this so with the RIMI report, the Regional Economic Model report, actually, if we could get this carbon price through with a dividend, the dividend would be coming back to the people, which would put money in people's pockets, which would drive creation of jobs. And I'm thinking about these unions and wondering, you know, unions have, you talk about the unions, you know, trying to protect their jobs, you put job conditions and wages and that sort of thing, and how we know why they collapsed. And I'm thinking about how people who are not necessarily in the union could work with the unions to support the unions, and with the proviso that we have environmental concerns connected with that. And I'm wondering how much that must be happening already.
I'll make a
What are the
comment
unions
about
in Fayetteville? Go ahead. Yeah.
I've tried to join the National Union of Teachers, the Federation of Teachers in Fayetteville, and as an associate, and I can't do it. It's still listed on their website, but I can't ever get to them to even offer money. So I see great hope in what you're talking about, that all of us in this room could join in. And I've been told that by union members, but I don't think it's quite as easy as it might be. They're down to 7%, possibly because they're not recruiting us. Or maybe we really can't help them and cost them more money for the paperwork. I don't know. But I see great potential in what you just said, and I'd like to hear more about it.
And you know,
maybe we can have Lionel Jordan was a leader here at the local union. Lionel could come and tell us all how to join a union.
Oh, that's interesting. What are the unions in Fayetteville? Anybody know?
The SEICU, what was that? This is,
The SEIU,
SEIU.
the
And
service workers.
Yeah, service
Service
workers.
workers.
Right, service
Teachers,
workers.
I assume, teachers union?
We don't have a teachers
I didn't think
union.
so.
But
Even the
federal
universities.
state employees union, what's that one? What
Federal
is- what
state.
are those?
And municipal and
Municipal,
county
yeah, right.
employees.
Are they all part of one?
Mhm.
Or,
Yeah, they're all-
SCI, something SCI.
or government workers, are they a part of one
Yeah.
overall union?
Trade
So that's a big
unions
one.
don't unionize in this state, right?
But see, you'd have to be
We're
a
a
member
regular
of,
state.
you'd have to be working for the government.
But the service unions are, I get emails from them, they're pretty impactful nowadays. It's housekeepers and,
Yes.
landscape people, and I'm trying to think of all the different ones they are. Elevator operators, we don't have that anymore, but
But still, it keeps dropping every year, doesn't it, in total number? I didn't know it got down to 7%.
amazing.
But Edward, I remember hearing about unions in the big climate march. Do you remember what unions were represented?
I don't know, I'd have to go to one of the national groups' website. I mean, there were a lot of unions, there were hundreds of groups represented, and probably at least 50 different.
Well, I would love to
All
think
the workers,
Yeah.
still.
that they understand sustainability then, if they're walking with the climate marchers.
Yeah.
They understand that, and they've probably made a transition to say how they can redefine the workplace for their well-being.
And I had something about government, and repeat, yes, we must work on the local level. But our government is three parts, and our legislature is right now, I hope, we all hope temporarily, locked down because of one party locked down. But we have a court, and I know that the court has disappointed all of us probably in this room in several different ways. But it's being sued now, but also by young people. It's being sued by different kinds of people all over the country. And Mr. Moyers this morning in his last program, you all, this is the end of Moyers and Company. He interviewed a woman who's written a new book about suing the Supreme Court under the concept of public trust, which she describes in her book apparently as coming from the Romans, but was a deep part of the conception of the founding fathers of the United States, and that many, many, many laws and rulings were based upon public trust. That is, that the officials of our country, our legislature, President, Congress, are supposed to do the right thing in terms of the atmosphere. The atmosphere that the land is in public trust, that our representatives are supposed to take care of it for us, and that in the past, and she cited cases this morning, judges have ruled on that basis. So here is another thing we must lose hope about our government. It's local, it's global, it's local and national too. It's local. We still have to hang on to our government, it seems to me. Otherwise, whatever we do on the local level will be bulldozed down easily. So I'm hoping, and let's all hope, that these suits to the Supreme Court, even though right now it's not favorable with those men up there, that they will be successful. This will be an enormous breakthrough.
There's an awful lot of movement about getting rid of Citizens United. There's a lot of movement on the internet.
Yes.
Petition this and petition that and sign this and sign that.
Yes, there are several ways of going about that, actually, and they're doing that. I have a lot of hope in that.
Who regretted Citizens United? She regretted some others. She regretted
Sandra Day O'Connor.
She regretted the Bush decision, which she voted for. And she regretted the Citizens United decision because she's never expected it to be used the way it was used. How did she get to the Supreme Court? I have a question. what basis were they basing the suit against Denton on? What were they going to be using to say that they could not?
I can't remember.
They
Sorry.
lost, or they couldn't?
It was on, this was, it may have been an alternate. I send you stuff like that every once in a while, but I'm not sure any of the stuff I send you gets through anymore. I have other friends I send things to, and I'm not sure it's getting
Well,
through.
you know, you get
somewhere.
500 emails a day.
I know, I delete 95%.
Well, things you don't open, like 10 times you get something from somebody and you don't open it, then your
It doesn't-
provider will quit,
doesn't send.
will start putting it in your junk. So I've begun to look every day in my junk just to see what they left out that I did want. And that often occurs because you can't open everything that comes across.
I
That's
read
most of it.
everything that will come from you guys.
Yeah, I do too. Usually you do.
I'll second that.
I did want to mention, read your time saved. Art has a wonderful column in it today about natural gas. Really well.
About what?
written About natural gas, about it would not be a viable alternative.
I finally subscribed to the but I haven't subscribed to the local paper.
Well, Art's column is every 3 weeks, and the Times, and what you do is you look at the back of the Times sports section. And he and Fran both have columns every 3 weeks. And anyway, don't miss
That's
Art
great.
today, it's fantastic, I'll send it to you.
It's fracking gas.
I will send it out, I'll
Good,
send
thank
it
you.
out to everybody. It's about natural gas and not being,
A bridge.
not being a viable
Absolutely.
bridge, not being, there's one reason that he didn't even mention, he mentioned that it produces too much methane, two, it gets cheaper, that people will use more, so it will, and also it, you would, put money to that instead of in renewables. But there's another reason that I'm gonna be on a conference call this Thursday that George Hale sent me some information about, is that they're lying about how much natural gas there is.
The plays are playing out, is what most people are saying.
Which Snake Oil was about, so
Yeah.
it's not, so, there's a reason it's not. Anyway,
Thank you.
are we done, or? Thank you.
My pleasure, thank you for the opportunity.
Fantastic.
I really enjoyed it.
Really appreciate all the huge amount of work.
Not smoking and firing the.
You're retired already.
Pardon?
We can't hear this.
I beg pardon.
I just didn't feel like it was an appropriate place to initiate that discussion in general, so I didn't.
You asked me something about senior Democrats and Hillary Clinton. This has been a very nice meeting.
I just got an inspiration for exactly how to take care of the whole fossil fuel problem.
Oh, good.
And it's based partly on a belief I share with some of you that we could survive without money, that not all people share, but we could. We could print up enough money to buy off all the shares of fossil fuel